I'm writing out of desperation. I need to vent this somewhere, and I think this forum is the perfect spot. I used to work at one of the most popular funeral homes in my city, only about 15 minutes away from my house. It was kind of a morbid job, but at the time I was taking classes at the local college, and it was the best I could have done at the time. Competitive pay, and people are always dying, so we were always busy. I didn't personally work with prepping the corpses for the funeral. I focused on working with the families of the deceased, on planning the appropriate services for their loved ones. I had been down where they held the bodies before on occasion. Sometimes I had to help the owners with certain monthly maintenance tasks down there. I'd always been somewhat creeped out about working there, but nothing beats what happened there a few days before I quit the job. We had a mid-40s mother and father come in, teared up as they usually are. They're inquiring about having a service for their late son. Apparently, he had been in a nasty car accident on the highway. His name was Bobby, and he was 19 at the time of his passing. Of course, with caring sympathy, I gave them a tour of the place and showed them our various products and services we offered. They liked our facility and selected the various types of things they wanted present at his funeral. We finalized everything and they left. The body was being transported over, along with a few personal objects his parents wanted buried with him. This isn't an unusual thing. Many people do this with deceased loved ones. When everything arrived, it included a basketball cap, a sports team hoodie, and his cell phone, turned off. How sad, I thought. This poor kid losing his life so early. I felt great sadness for him and his family. The funeral was planned in 2 days, on a Saturday. I continued working my regular tasks for the rest of the day and went home. Exhausted when coming in, I threw my coat on the table and immediately headed up to the shower. Hopped in, washed myself, and dried off, finally putting on some PJs. This was my usual routine. I finally headed into my living room and turned on the TV, finally getting a chance to relax. A few hours go by, and I begin dozing off a bit. Realizing bedtime is coming, I turn the TV off and prepare to call it a night. My iPhone beeps a text notification. Figuring it must be one of my friends or family, I unlocked my passcode and opened the message up. I was somewhat surprised. This text came from a number not saved in my contacts list. "Hello," it read. A little weirded out, I responded. "Hey there, who is this?" I began heading to my bedroom and shut the door. Turned the TV on and got into bed. I usually would watch a bit of TV before falling asleep. My phone beeps again. "Bobby," it said. "Bobby who?" I asked. I had never known anyone by the name. "You know who I am. You met my parents today." I got a bit dizzy as I read it, along with a rock settling in my stomach. There's no way this is that kid, I thought to myself. I responded, "This isn't funny. What happened to him was horrible, and no one should be joking around like this." The number responded, "Shut your rotten mouth. You let them ruin my funeral. Ruin it. It should have been you in the car accident, not me. You'll have an early grave too if it goes my way." At this point, I was flipping out and beginning to really get upset. I blocked the phone number and put my phone on the charger. How could I have ruined his funeral? His parents made the calls on everything. Taking deep breaths to calm and relax myself, I tried to make a rational explanation for what was going on. I would talk to my boss in the morning about it. The next day came, and I relayed the events of the prior night to my boss. He explained, "It's got to be some idiot kids screwing with you." I wasn't sure. I know kids were good with technology these days, but they couldn't be that good. There was only one way to check for sure. I waited until we closed at 8 p.m. I told my boss I needed to finish some paperwork and would be sure to lock up when I leave. I heard his car pull out of the parking lot, and I sat my paperwork down. I walked out of my office and headed for the basement. I opened the door and headed down the stairs to the embalming room. It always has this sour mothball-like stench to it, and it hits your eyes and nose like a rotten onion. I walked through the embalming room and made my way to the employee corridor, and down to the room that held the corpses. This room had an entirely different smell, one truly blood-curdling. The stench of rotten eggs is the best I can describe it. Even though they embalmed the bodies, they still had the strange odor. I opened the door and walked in. The room is fairly large, and it can hold up to 60 bodies at a time. I found the slot with his name and unlocked the hatch, slowly pulling out the coffin. I unclipped the latches and slowly opened it. There he laid, solemn and cold. Beside him lay the team hoodie, hat, and his cell phone. The expression on his face was lifeless and frowning. You could see his body had been damaged severely. Our team had put him together the best they could. They had put a wig over his regular hair. Apparently, the backside of his head was broken open in the crash. They used this as a way of covering it. Along with that, there was a huge gash going from the left side of his forehead all the way down to the right side of his neck. Of course, this was all covered with skin-colored makeup and putty the best they could. I observed the items his family wanted him to be buried with were tucked to the left side of him. I noticed the cell phone was now on. I picked it up and tried to open it. It had been locked with a security passcode. I sat the phone on his lifeless chest and reached into my pocket for my phone. I pulled up my blocked list and unblocked the number. I switched over to call mode and dialed the number. As my phone rang, the phone on this kid's chest began ringing and vibrating. I dropped my cell phone in shock. My hands began shaking as I took his phone and placed it back to the left side of his coffin. My body began to feel heavy and weird. I bent over and picked my phone up. I reached up and over quickly to seal his coffin. But before doing so, to my horror, I noticed the frown on his face had changed to an eerie grin. My body began to feel heavier and heavier as my legs began to shake in terror. I slammed the coffin shut and pushed it back into the storage holder. I ran to the door, shut the lights off, and fell down into the hallway. I swear I heard groaning noises coming from the storage room I had just left. I picked myself up and hastily made my way down the hallway and through the embalming room. I almost tripped on the first stair on the way up, but I made it back up to the main level. Slamming the door behind me, I felt a bit better. I went into my office, grabbed my keys, and the rest of my things, and ran out of that place faster than I had ever before. I shut the entrance door and bolted it. I speed walked over to my car, got in, and started it up. My phone begins vibrating and ringing. I reach into my pocket, and to my absolute horror, it was coming from Bobby's number. It was actually calling me this time. My hands were shaking as I swiped answer on the screen. Hello? And in the most demonic, deep voice I have ever heard. Why don't you come back down here? Come down and see me again. Come now, or I'll come for you. Immediately following with sinister laughter. I began screaming. Screw off! I don't know who you are or how you are doing this, but stop it. It answered. You know exactly who I am. Come back down and play with me. We can be best buds. I hung the phone up, and tears ran down my face. I drove directly to my boss's house and beat down his door. Crying and shaking, I explained there was no way it could have been anyone else. I was the last to leave the funeral home. That phone was locked in his coffin in the basement. I resigned my position immediately and never went back after the events of that night. I still receive texts and phone calls from the number. Even after I blocked it, they continue. I just hope one day this stops. I now work at a boat rental business. No more dead guys for me. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.